You never are able to go back. When they have the old saying, you can never go back home. Well, some people probably can get away with that, but once you've seen what you see in combat, and you grow up in a whole year, that first year, I'm 21, you could never identify with some of these kids anymore. For 6 months, I was in Benoit, which is just north of Saigon. And then we moved to a place called Fuloy. And the Fuloy had been the base for the 1st Infantry Division until they went home, where they were living. And they were not living in the good things like we had in Benoit, where the Air Force had given us the compound. So you can imagine if the Air Force gives you the compound, you got hot water, you got toilets, and it was a great place to live. And I thought, wow, this is going to be an easy thing to do. Well, then we moved to Fuloy, and it wasn't an easy thing to do.
Was the Terry Garlock story on your first tour?
Yeah, we were out in our 2 ships, Cobras, and doing a sort of a recon. And the second ship, their tail rotor fell off. So they go into this death spiral, and they hit the ground really hard. The front seat in a Cobra, the seat does not collapse. So automatically that the front seat is going to either have a broken back or he's sustained such damage that he's probably unconscious and can't get out. And the thing's laying on its side, and it was starting to smoke, so we landed right next to it, and I jumped out and went over, and it's laying on his door where he can't open it up, so I've got to go through the other side. I started banging on the cockpit, and I said, well, that's stupid. So I pulled out my .38 pistol, and I was banging on there to chip him out. And so I finally was able to do that, and just grabbed him gently and pulled him about 30 yards away in case the aircraft decided it was going to catch fire. So that's how Terry Garlock got out.
There was a story about you and Larry Pucci and your with Jerry Ulmer and all of them. Could you tell me that story?
Yes. Our president, Nixon, decided we needed to invade Cambodia. And why is because Cambodia was a sanctuary for the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong coming down from North Vietnam, and then they would move into South Vietnam. So the idea was to go over there, capture their weapons and supplies, try and push them back up, just and basically annihilate them. So Larry Pucci is on my wing. He's 19. He's the aircraft commander, a 19-year-old on a 21-year-old. So you could see it's similar to like what you see in B-17s in World War II. They're all babies. We were. So we got out there and make a short story long. There's a Vietnamese company, good guys, and they have 2 lieutenants, our Army lieutenants, as their advisors. And so you call on the radio and you say, okay, what do you want us to do? We're the bad guys. We're going to come in from south to north or east to west. And I made a couple of runs on this, what we call a tree square. And it's in between rice paddies, and so I came in, I made a run, and shot some rockets, and peeled off, and came around again, and shot some more rockets. And just as I was braking, I looked down to my left, and there's a guy, and I'm down about 500 feet, so I could see pretty good. And he's got this machine gun on the little wheels. We call it a high-speed 30, and he's just nailing our ship. But he didn't know he needed to lead us. So if he had, we'd have been in big trouble. So we got this tail boom, and he got everything back in the hydraulics and all that. So I get hydraulic light coming on. Number 1, no sweat, but because you just lose the pedal control. But if you get a number 2 light with that, you're in big trouble, because then you're not going to be able to move the cyclic nor the pedals. And so you have to use, at that time, had an emergency accumulator, which had a hydraulic charge in it, which was supposedly to give you 2 strokes up, 2 strokes down. So anyway, short story long, we made it to the ground, and we jumped out. We got over to the Arvin Company with the 2 lieutenants. And so, of course, my wing ship's up there circling around, and we get on their radio and tune in our frequency and talk to our sister ship. And I said, they're at the end of the tree square there, maybe you can put some fire down. So he comes around and shoots some rockets and probably got rid of the guy. But as they came around for another run, what happens is in the break, when you're attacking like that, you're in the break, the front seat covers you with minigun, just spread, so it keeps their heads down while you're making your turn around. Well, as he started to turn around and it stopped. Well, that means he either had a jam or something happened. So I said, Larry, what's going on? He says, I don't know. All I could see is a hole in the back of his neck, co-pilot's neck. So he says, I'm going to go to Tay Ninh and take him to the hospital. But I think the aircraft took 1 round, and I believe it probably went up through the jugular and then through the spine, so he never knew what happened. But that's just war. And I think that's back to your original question, like I said, you never go home because you've seen things like that. And I mean, the ship flew back to Fuloy, and they get the fire hose out and they rinse it out because we're going to need the aircraft the next day. That's not insensitive. That's just the way life is over there. So that's the story of that.
So you came back in '73, and just in the interest of time, let's briefly talk about your career leading up into 1980-81. What were you up to in those years?
Yeah, at 70, I went back to Fort Rucker in '73, and I was an instructor pilot for a little while, and then wanted to go to Europe. So they assigned me to a D Troop, 3rd of the 8th Cav, the 8th Infantry Division. So I stayed there for 4 years, and those were great years. Germany was a lot of fun back then. So at the end of '78, I showed up in the B Company 229th. As I recall it, the hostages, Eagle Claw fails. And so there's going to be an effort, and I wasn't aware of what the effort was going to be, but the effort was probably going to be to when Reagan got in, that we would have another attempt at this. And what the deal was is the kids had gone down to, and I call them kids because they were all probably like 21 or 22 at the time, and I was old. I was 32, I think. So I was an old guy, So we all had disappeared, went to Gulfport, where the National Guard, and I think somebody else has touched on this, had a whole line of OH-6s, they're vintage Vietnam OH-6s. They have no modifications, anything. So, but we're going to learn to fly. So the deal was you got 5 hours of dual time for your transition, and then you flew it for 5 hours solo, and poof, at 10 hours, you're ready to go. Well, these kids have just gotten out of flight school. They're not ready to go anywhere, but they sucked it up, they were. And the other issue, as somebody else has talked on, was the night vision goggles. The night vision goggles were not what you have today. These were your father's goggles. They were full faceplate. There was no peripheral vision. You had to have this map that you had to read with a big black line so that you could figure out what the headings were, and you had to adjust the diopter rings on one eye so that you could come in and focus on that map, and then right back out. And you're going to do this when you're sort of in formation. Okay, So that's the genesis of that. And so that went on for quite some time. After everybody got situated and got their transitions done, and we'd run some missions, and we're going to relocate to Duke Field. It's an Eglin auxiliary base, but we're gonna fly out of there. Someone had mentioned before, one of your interviews, that's where we lost our first individual, and that was a sad event. We didn't know then, just like we didn't know a lot of things, but it was kind of catch as catch can, and we learned on the run. And I think if you look back on everything, it was a monumental effort, and so that was it for Duke Field. And from Duke, we learned some other tactics and procedures, perfected some things that we had screwed up on, like getting Specialist Timothy and losing him. So that's it for the early stage of Duke Field. So I don't know if I should just transition now to how do we get the aircraft, these aircraft that nobody has except the National Guard, how are we going to get all of those to Fort Campbell? And oh, by the way, we're going to have 6 AH-6 gunships. How are we going to hide those? We've got to hide them from our people, but we got to hide them from satellite overflights. So we go to a place called Clarksville Base, and Clarksville Base is where the Marines had all of their troops when Fort Campbell it was a nuke facility. But B-52s could take off. It's a 10,000-foot runway there. But all the nukes were gone, and so we could kind of move in, and where they worked on their trucks, we could push our little helicopters in. And so we started increasing our levels of confidence and capabilities, and I'll just say that we were doing really good. And one night we were going to have a demonstration. We were going to show some folks that we could really do this. And unfortunately, that's the night Mike Grimm ran into the electrical poles on the river. There were 2 AH-6 gunships there flying. I gave up my seat to let somebody else have a turn, and I just got in number 4 aircraft and flew that one. And so it was quite startling to see this lightning bolt go sideways like this. But when they hit that stanchion, it just kind of wiped off, wiped out the left side, and it threw the pilot, the instructor pilot, threw him out of the aircraft about 75 feet. It flayed him from knee to hip, but he managed to break up a chem light and wave it so we'd know where he was. And we kind of went and got him, and he took off and went to the hospital to get him fixed. And there were some other machinations that took place to find Mike Grimm's body, but we finally did locate it. So that was a big loss for all of us, because most of us consider him the father of the Night Stalkers.
Let's get into talking about Grenada. We got a good maybe 20 minutes or so to talk about Urgent Fury. So walk me through what happened and your role in that operation.
You know, our deal is not in the daytime. Our deal is at night. But when you take the element of surprise away, then you're just hanging your stuff out. So that's what happened to our Blackhawks. They come in the daytime, they're going to take their targets out, and they're going to drop SEALs at one place, the Radio Free Grenada, and the other ones are going to go into Richmond prison. And that all went to doo-doo because they could see us, and we paid the price. There were deaths. Marine Corps is losing people too, and they had there's another story segues on that. They lost a Cobra, and it crashed, but one person was killed by fire, and the other guy, I'm not sure, I think he was that backseat fellow, he managed to land that Cobra with one arm. You can read about him today. They left him in. I don't know if he's in today. That's been 40 years ago. But he landed that Cobra. So he's got a wingman up here 1,500 feet. This is St. George's Bay here. It's all water, okay? So we had come back from one mission, and we went down on the beach to just eat some sea rations or something. We were hungry. And so we're all sitting down there watching this Cobra, and he's providing protection for this little CH-46, a Marine. Looks like a Chinook, but it's not. So this little 46 is, and he gets close to the shoreline, and he turns around and he goes back out. And then he turns around and tries to go back in. And the Cobra's sitting up here still, and he's not providing any fire. And all of a sudden, his blades leave the aircraft. I mean, the whole blade thingy. So one of two things: he either got shot and pulled aft cyclic and got mast bump, which, because the mast is hollow, I never knew that until later in life. But they lost their mast, and from 1,500 feet they went straight in. That was tragic to watch that. But for the life of me, I don't know why they were flying around at 1,500 feet when they got ZSU-23 twos, and they got a ton of 51 calibers, and a 51 cal will rock your life if you get hit with one. I've literally experienced that in Vietnam, and it'll move you. It'll actually move you, and most of them are armor-piercing rounds. So if it hits your transmission, you're toast. So, but anyway, they were up there, and that was so sad for those guys to lose their lives for that. So we get finished with lunch, sad lunch, and our colonel says, GT, I want you to take your guns up there and mess with them a little bit at the governor's mansion. Oh, I said, well, that's a pretty good op order. Go up there and mess with them a little bit. So we saddled up, and we went out over the water about 5-10 feet, and we flew up where you could see the Radio Free Grenada is one antenna, with wires going down. There's and a cinder block building below it. So we turn in, and we come. We're going to just make a run and go right up the hill to the governor mansion. Easy peasy. Well, we get about abeam the radio station, and I look down, and there's a BTR-60 Soviet wheeled vehicle, and with a lot of people on it, and they're all drilling me, and some of them actually led me so that my canopy kind of got shot up, and my blades got shot up, and your blades are shot up because they start whistling. So I told my wingman, I was breaking left, and so we went down and went back over the water, and I said, let's just get down, get slow, because if the blades come apart, I'll at least be at like 3 or 4 feet. Maybe there won't be. So I said, well, let's see if we can't make it back to camp. So we did. Long story short, shut the aircraft down, and it just made these whistling sounds. So that's one aircraft out of the game. After we came back from that mission, about an hour later, came down that we want to go up and get Keith Lucas's body. Okay, So the easiest way to get there is take off from where we are, go out by where I think the Grand Aunts camp, where the kids, the students were, and you go by the yacht club, and you go to the end of the little inlet bay there at the end, and drop the Rangers off, and they'll hike up there and look for Captain Lewis's body. So we do, and I'm leading, and here we go. We're off, and we're coming here, and there's a Chinook up here, not a Chinook, a Black Hawk, and he's going to drop the Rangers off. Okay, so it's the classic Vietnam way to stop. You actually come in like this, and instead of going like this, you actually do what we called a dust-off flare, and you come in sideways like that, and you turn, and then you level off, and when you do that, then the Ranger's supposed to jump off. Well, I just happened to be lined up with Ernie Armored Trout. I hope we can get him. And so the Rangers had not gotten off yet. And one of the things we learned with covering dust-offs in Vietnam was you watch the tip path plane of the rotor system. If it dips like that, that's because somebody had a flinch. And so he flinched left, which I knew then that there were bad guys shooting at him from the right. So I hit the minigun trigger. And our company commander is sitting in my left seat, says, cease fire, they're friendlies down there. And I went, I know that. But the funny thing was, I had IR tracers. I couldn't see them. No. So there was no way to take those out, because it's daytime, and load back in the right kind of stuff. I just counted all my experience. But yeah, so anyway, Captain Lucas' body was not there. We didn't lose any of the Rangers. They never got off the aircraft. And so we just retrograded out. And there's another story, but we don't have time.
I think we got time for it, yeah.
So I told you the story about I'll shorten it. Went by Radio Free Grenada. I get shot up. We peel off, and I go back and I get another aircraft. And at midnight that night, they go, we got a mission. I think I've been up 35, 40 hours. I mean, I'm tired. And so I said, what is it? And he says, there's some seals out in the water in a boat, and they need to get picked up. Oh, hey, we'll go. So what had transpired was, when the knuckleheads on the BMP started shooting at me, that gave a small window for the SEALs that were in the cinder block house at the radio station to throw their wounded over their shoulder, and E&E half mile, 3/4 of a mile back to the shoreline. And once they got a boat, once you get SEALs in the water, they're going to be okay. But they had wounded. So anyway, we had 2 Black Hawks out there, and a little bird gun circling them like this. And they throw out their rappelling ladder down to where the guys are in the little boat, a piece of wood or whatever the hell it was. And so up come the SEALs up this caving ladder, which is about this wide, and up in the inside they plop. And then this guy, the SEAL, with a guy over his shoulder in a fireman carry, grabs hold of that thing and starts climbing up. I have never seen anything like that. And he made it to the top, and they pulled his butt in. But that was about it for me. I went back and went to bed. It was kind of fun, and it wasn't fun. What did Dickens say in The Tale of Two Cities? It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. So I'll leave it with that.